The morning they brought me home from the Grafen border, the snow was coming in sideways off the inland sea, and I could not feel Sorin at all. That was the thing no one wrote in the dispatches. They wrote about the ambush at Coldstep Ridge, 14 wolves, 6 survivors, the pack line held by a margin so thin it still made my hands close into fists when I thought of it. They wrote about the campaign medal the council pressed into my palm 2 days after I crossed back through Thornwall's iron gates. They wrote about the promotion, the rank, the new title Alpha King of Thornwall, pressed on me by a dying king's council, because there was no one left closer to the bloodline, and I had held the border when no one else could. They did not write about Sorin. My wolf had gone quiet somewhere between Coldstep Ridge and the long road home, and by the time I stood in the great hall of Thornwall's keep with snow still melting in my hair, he was simply absent, a cold, still place behind my ribs where a living thing had been. Not gone. I would have known if he were gone. I would have felt the tearing of it, the way every wolf-blooded man in Thornwall knew the particular grief of a severed bond. He was still there. He was simply unreachable, as if a door had been shut between us and the latch had rusted through. The healers came first. Thornwall had 3 pack healers of note, and the council sent all of them in the first week. The eldest, a woman named Bereth with iron-gray hair and hands that had steadied a dozen fractured wolves over 40 years of practice, sat with me for 2 full evenings in the stone room off the hall. She placed her palms flat against my sternum, closed her eyes, pressed her awareness inward the way a healer does, feeling along the bond thread between man and wolf spirit, looking for the break, the cold spot, the wound. When she finally opened her eyes, she said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, "He is there, he has simply turned his face away." "Can you turn it back?" I asked. She was quiet for too long. "I can try," she said, and she did. For 2 more evenings she tried, her breathing slow and deliberate, her hands warm and careful against my chest, while I sat still and waited for something to move in that cold interior dark. Nothing moved. The second healer, a younger man named Oswin, had trained in the Eastern wolf holds where the methods were different, less touch, more breathwork, more spoken tone, a particular frequency they believed could call a sleeping wolf spirit out of its retreat. He spent 3 days with me. On the 3rd day he told me with genuine regret that he had never worked on a wolf spirit that far into silence, and that he did not know how to reach it. The 3rd healer did not stay long enough to try a second time. I did not blame any of them. I had seen what Sorin had seen at Coldstep Ridge. I had lived what he had lived. I understood why he had turned away. War does something to the animal part of a man that the rational part cannot fix or explain or talk around. The wolf is older than reason. The wolf decides what it will carry and what it will not, and it does not take counsel. The council grew nervous. A king without his wolf was a king whose authority rested on ceremony alone, and ceremony had limits. The pack felt it, not consciously, not in a way anyone spoke aloud, but in the slight pause before my commanders met my eyes in the morning briefings, in the fractional hesitation in the hall when I entered. An alpha king is partly his wolf, and mine was absent, and everyone in Thornwall's stone-floored keep could sense it. It was the pack elder Verath who came to me on the 12th day. He was ancient, white-haired, slow-moving, with the particular stillness of a man who had simply run out of urgency over the course of 80 years. He sat across from me at the long table in the council room, wrapped both hands around a cup of tea he did not drink, and looked at me the way only very old people can, as if they have seen your exact situation before in another man's face, in another century. "There is a woman," he said, "in Ashfin village." I kept my face still. I was good at that. 3 years on the border had made me very good at that. "She is not a pack healer," he continued. "She has no formal training, no title. She keeps herbs. She makes tinctures for the village sick. Common work." He paused and turned the cup in his hands. "2 winters ago, my nephew's wolf went into retreat after his mate died. Not the same as yours, grief, not war, but the silence was similar. The pack healers could not reach it. Someone in Ashfin told him about this woman. He went. She laid her hands on him and called to the wolf for one evening, and by morning the wolf had come back. I said nothing. Her name is Myra, Varath said. She has lived in Ashfin since she was a girl, quiet woman, grows things, heals things, no mate, no bond mark, nobody's Luna. He set the cup down. I don't know what she does, I don't know why it works. But I have seen my nephew's wolf run again. So I thought you should know there is a woman in Ashfin named Myra, who can apparently reach the ones the healers cannot. He rose, nodded once and left. I sat in the empty council room for a long time after. Myra, yes, I knew the name. I knew the face that went with it, dark eyes, winter calm, hands that always smelled of pine resin and dried thyme. I knew the kitchen she worked in, the low window above her herb table that let in afternoon light, the particular way she stood in her doorway, one hand on the frame, watching the road. I knew all of this because I had memorized it without meaning to, in the weeks before I rode for the border 3 years ago. I had not written to her, I had not sent word. I had told myself this was the right thing, that a soldier going to a border campaign had no business binding a woman to him, with promises he might not be able to keep. I had told myself this, and I had believed it, and some nights on the border I had almost managed to stop thinking about the way she looked in the afternoon light. I told my steward I would be gone for 2 days. I rode to Ashfin alone. The village sat in a shallow bowl between 2 granite ridges, close enough to the inland sea that the air tasted of salt even in winter. The houses were old stone, low-roofed, practical, a working village, not a wealthy one. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business and nobody said so aloud. I came in off the north road as the afternoon light was going amber, and I knew, without quite meaning to, exactly which house was hers. I had been here once before, 4 years ago, before the campaign, before the border. A brief detachment through Ashfin, 3 days, a storm that kept us longer than planned. 3 days of an afternoon window, a quiet woman with herb-stained hands, and conversations that felt oddly like coming to rest. I tied my horse at the low fence post and stood in the road for a moment. The window was lit. Inside, the movement of someone tending something, a slow, deliberate motion. The smell of wood smoke and something medicinal, a cold air ghost of it drifting through the cracked shutter. I knocked. The motion inside stopped, a pause, and then the door opened. She looked at me for what felt like a very long time without speaking. I had prepared on the road for a number of responses, anger, tears, a door shut in my face. I had not prepared for this. The way her expression simply settled like water after a stone has been dropped in it, going quiet and still. Not cold, just finished with its rippling. As if she had already had, at some earlier point, whatever grief or anger my absence warranted, and had set it down, and was now simply looking at me. Calder, she said, not a question. Myra, I said. She looked at me a moment longer, and then she stepped back from the door. That was all. That was her answer to 3 years of silence, a step back, a door held open. I went inside. The kitchen was exactly as I had remembered it. That was the first thing that struck me, not that it was the same, but that I had remembered it correctly in detail, when I would have expected 3 years of border mud and cold and noise to have blurred the image into something vague. The herb table under the low window, the bundles of dried things hanging from the ceiling beam, the iron stove with its slow orange pulse of warmth. The 2 plain chairs at the table, angled toward each other the way chairs angle when a person uses one often and leaves the other in permanent invitation. She put a kettle on. She did not ask why I was there. She did not ask where I had been or why I had not written. She moved around her kitchen the way she always had, quietly, without wasted motion, and I stood near the door because I did not know what to do with my hands. Sit, she said, without looking up. I sat. She set a cup in front of me. Steam rose from it, and beneath the steam something dark and resinous, pine bark and something else I could not name. Not tea. Not exactly. The smell of it hit the back of my throat, and for one moment, one strange and disorienting moment, I felt something shift in the cold place behind my ribs. Barely. The smallest thing. Like a coal not quite extinguished, breathing in. Then it was still again. She sat across from me. She folded her hands on the table and looked at me, at my face, really, in the way healers look, not at you but through you, mapping the hidden geography of what is wrong. "Varath sent you," she said. "He mentioned you," I said. "Your wolf is gone quiet." "Yes." She nodded, as if this confirmed something she had already sensed when she opened the door. "How long?" "Since Coldstep Ridge, 43 days. "The border campaign." "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, looking at her hands. Then she looked up at me again. "I'm not a pack healer," she said. "I know. I don't know why what I do works. I have no training, no credential. What I do is I listen. I wait. I call the way you'd call to something you can't see in the dark, not certain if it will answer." She met my eyes. "Sometimes it answers. Sometimes it doesn't. I can't promise you anything." "I know," I said again. "All right," she said. She rose and came around the table and stood beside me. I turned in the chair to face her. She was not tall, the top of her head came just past my shoulder, and in the firelight from the iron stove, her face was all warm shadow and amber edge. She looked at me for a moment as if making a decision. Then she placed both her hands flat against my chest. The warmth came first. Not the warmth of her hands. That was simply physical, simple human heat. The press of her palms through the fabric of my shirt. What came first was the other warmth, the one that did not have a physical location, the one that started in the center of my chest and spread outward by degrees, like the first reach of light from a lamp turned up in a dark room. Slow, deliberate, a warmth that did not hurry because it did not need to. She had her eyes closed. Her breathing was steady in, then a long slow out, and she was doing exactly what she had described, listening, waiting, calling in that quiet interior way toward something she could not see. I felt it the moment Soren heard her. It was not dramatic. It was not the surge or the howl or the fierce answering blaze I might have expected from a wolf spirit waking. It was smaller than that. It was the feeling of something turning slowly, as if stiff from long stillness, turning toward the sound. A head lifted in the dark, ears forward, testing the air, not certain yet, not trusting yet, but attending, pointing toward the warmth the way a compass needle points north, not by will but by nature. Myra's hands pressed slightly more firmly against my chest. She had felt it too, I could tell by the shift in her breathing, a held breath, careful not to startle. She kept calling. I did not speak. I sat with my hands open on my knees and the fire in the stove making its quiet sound, and I watched her face in the amber light, and I thought that this was perhaps the quietest I had been in 3 years. Not the enforced stillness of the border, where silence was tactical, where you held your breath because noise could kill you. This was different. This was the stillness of a room where something important was happening at a pace that could not be rushed, and the right response was simply to hold still and let it happen. Time moved in a way I could not track. At some point, the fire burned lower without either of us tending it, and neither of us moved to fix it. At some point, she shifted her position slightly, one palm moving to my shoulder, the other staying at my chest, and the warmth moved with her, that interior warmth, not the physical one, and I felt Soren take one step forward in the dark. One step tentative. The way an animal returns to a place it has been frightened away from, slow, ready to retreat, testing the ground before it trusts its weight. She held still, she waited. He took another step. I made a sound that I was not expecting to make, something low and involuntary, not quite a word, not quite anything. She opened her eyes. She looked at me for a moment. Her expression was calm, but there was something in it, a careful quality, as if she were aware of a thing that might shatter if she moved too quickly. "He's there," she said softly. "He's listening." "I know," I said. My voice came out strange, rougher than I intended. "I can feel him." "He's not healed," she said. "Not yet, but he's listening." "That's more than he's done in 43 days, I said. She looked at me a moment longer. Then she said, with a quietness that did not seem to require an answer, "He must have seen terrible things." Something in my chest compressed. "Yes," I said. She nodded. She did not say anything else. She simply returned to what she was doing, hands in place, breathing steady, and called again, and Soren took another step forward in the dark. She worked for 2 hours that first evening. By the end of it, Soren was not whole, but he was present. That is the only word I have for it, present. No longer turned away, no longer behind the rusted latch. In the room, alert, watching. Still quiet, still careful, still carrying what he had carried since Cold Step Ridge, but facing forward, facing the warmth. She stepped back when she was done. She rolled her shoulders, the way someone rolls them when they have been holding a careful position for too long. She went to the stove and added wood without being asked, and the fire jumped up orange and willing. "Tomorrow evening," she said. "Come back tomorrow evening, we'll try again." I looked at her. "I rode from Thornwall," I said. "I know," she said. "There's a room at the Ashfin Lodge for travelers. Tomas keeps it. It's plain, but it's clean." She paused, her back still to me, tending the fire. "Or you can sleep by the fire here on the bench. It's longer than you think." I slept on the bench. She did not make ceremony of it. She brought a blanket, set it over the bench arm, and went to her own room without further comment. The kitchen was warm. The smell of the herbs and the pine smoke and the specific quiet of her house settled around me, and somewhere behind my ribs, Soren lay down for the first time in 43 days and stayed where he was instead of retreating. I lay on the bench in the dark and looked at the low ceiling beams and thought about things I had been very carefully not thinking about for 3 years. I had told myself, when I rode away from Ashfin 4 years ago, that I was protecting her. A soldier on a border campaign had no right to promise. If he did not come back and the Grafen border had not been sending soldiers home in good numbers, then any word he had spoken would be a debt unpaid, a wound where there might have been only a clean ending. I had believed this. I had thought it was the right calculation. What I had not accounted for was the possibility that she might have made her own calculation, that she might have stayed, kept her window lit, tended her herbs, healed what she could reach, and waited without asking anything because she had already decided on her own terms and in her own time that the waiting was worth it. I did not know if that was what she had done. I did not know the shape of the last 3 years from her side of them. But I lay in her kitchen on her bench under her blanket, with Soren finally lying still inside me, and I thought that I had perhaps been solving for the wrong variable all along. The second evening was different from the first. Soren came forward faster, recognizing, I thought, the particular quality of her calling, the warmth that was hers specifically, as distinct from the warmth of every other healer's hands as a voice is distinct from every other voice. He came forward and he stayed forward. And as he came, something else happened, something the healers at Thornwall had not mentioned as a possibility, perhaps because none of them had expected to get far enough to encounter it. The mark began to come. It started on her left wrist. I noticed it first because I was watching her face, and then I was watching her hands, and I saw, in the firelight, the faintest luminescence on the inside of her wrist. A warmth of light, not flame, a golden undertone rising through the skin as if lit from within. It brightened slowly, the way dawn brightens, not a switch thrown but a gradual accumulation of light, until suddenly the room was fuller of it than it had been a moment before. She felt it. I saw her still. "What is that?" she asked softly, not opening her eyes. A bond mark, I said. My voice was very careful. A long pause. Her breathing did not change. Yours, she asked. Yours, I said. On your wrist. It comes from. I stopped. I said it plainly because she deserved plainness after everything else. It comes from the mate bond, between a wolf-blooded man and his fated mate. The mark appears on the mate's skin when the bond is, when it recognizes itself. Silence. It appeared on your wrist, I said, when you called Soren back. She opened her eyes. She looked down at her wrist, at the warm golden light pooling there under her skin. She studied it for a long moment. I could not read her face. Then she looked up at me, and in the firelight I saw that whatever she was feeling was very large and very controlled, and she was keeping it that way by deliberate effort. How long have you known? She asked. I didn't, I said. Not consciously. I don't know when Soren knew. He knows things before I do. He always has. I paused. When I left for the border, I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I was protecting you from a promise I might not be able to keep. You were protecting yourself, she said, not cruelly, just plainly. I sat with that for a moment. Yes, I said. I think that's also true. She looked at her wrist again. The light was steady now, not fading, a warm golden line tracing a pattern that was neither exactly a symbol nor exactly random, the way all bond marks are, unique to the pair. She turned her wrist slightly in the firelight, watching it. 3 years, she said. 3 years, I said. I didn't wait, she said. I felt the words like something physical. I want you to understand that. I didn't decide to wait for you. I simply did not move on because I didn't want to, and I had enough to do, and I didn't. She paused, searching for the word. I didn't want to do anything that felt like pretending the 3 days in Ashfin were something they were not. I looked at her. What were they? She considered the question seriously, the way she considered everything seriously. Important, she said finally. They were important. They were the first time in a long time that I felt correctly located, like I was in the right place, talking to the right person, doing the right things. And then you left and I continued and I was fine. I wasn't waiting. I was simply fine, and the important thing had happened, and maybe it would happen again and maybe it wouldn't. She looked back up at me. And then you knocked on my door, she said. Soren, inside me, made a sound I had not heard him make in a very long time. Not a howl, not the fierce sound of recognition or claiming. Something quieter, the sound of a wolf settling into rest, the long exhale of an animal that has finally found its way back to familiar ground. I should have written, I said. Yes, she said simply. I should have done many things differently. Yes, she said again, and there was no punishment in it, only the simple acknowledgement of a true thing. I would like, I said slowly, to do them differently now from here, if you would allow it. She was quiet for a moment. She looked at her wrist, at the bond mark glowing softly in the firelight. She looked at me. She seemed to be conducting some internal accounting, not dramatic, not a crisis of decision, but a clear-eyed reckoning of the kind I had come to understand was simply the way she operated. She did not make impulsive judgments. She did not perform her feelings. She measured and then she spoke. You are the Alpha King of Thornwall, she said. Yes. I am an herb keeper in Ashfin, no pack standing, no rank, no lineage worth mentioning. Yes, I said. Those are the facts, she said. Yes, I said. She nodded once, as if deciding something. Then my answer is, yes, from here, on the condition that you do not again make decisions about what I need without asking me. Yes, I said. Soren made that sound again, that long, settling exhale, and for the first time in 43 days I felt him not just present but whole, not undamaged, not unmarked. He would carry Cold Step Ridge for the rest of our life together, the way all soldiers carry their worst campaigns, but whole. Facing forward, at rest. The mate mark on her wrist glowed steady in the quiet kitchen. I stayed in Ashfin 3 days. I should note what those 3 days were and were not. They were not a courtship, though some of that was woven in. They were not a declaration, though that too was folded into the hours in ways that required no announcement. They were, more than anything, a resumption of the thing that had been interrupted 4 years ago by my silence and my leaving, and that had apparently continued somewhere quietly in the years between, like a river that goes underground and travels in the dark, and comes back up downstream still running in the same direction. We talked. This is the thing that surprised me, not the healing, not the mark, not Soren finally whole at my center, but how much we talked and how easily. About Ashfin, about the border, about what the campaign had done to the men I'd served with, the ones who came back and the ones who didn't, about what it is to spend 3 years doing a necessary thing in a terrible place and not know, until you are out of it, what shape you have been reshaped into. She listened the way she did everything, completely, without performance, without rushing to fill the silences with reassurance. She asked questions that were never the wrong questions. And she told me about the 3 years from her side, not dramatically. She was not, I was learning, a person who dressed things dramatically. She had lost a patient she tried very hard to save, an old man from the village's far end, a chest illness, 3 months of everything she knew, and still the end came. She had learned 2 new plants from a traveler out of the eastern holds who came through Ashfin in the second winter. She had built a second herb table from timber she'd bartered a summer's worth of tinctures for, because the first one was getting crowded. She had not waited. She had been alive and busy and present, and the important thing had simply remained important while everything else continued. On the 3rd morning, I told her I needed to go back to Thornwall. She nodded. "I would like you to come," I said. "Not immediately, in your own time. I will send a proper escort when you're ready, or come myself. Whichever you prefer." "I'll come myself," she said. "I don't need an escort." I looked at her. "It's 2 days' ride." "I know," she said. "I'm a good rider." I believed her. I was at the door when she said, quietly behind me, "Calder." I turned. She was standing at her herb table in the morning light from the low window, her hands at her sides, the bond mark warm and visible on her wrist in the pale winter sun. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman of no rank in a plain kitchen in a small village, quiet and still and entirely unimpressed by anything except the things that actually deserved impression. "Try not to do the thing again," she said, "where you decide what's good for me without asking." "Yes," I said. "And right," she said. "If there are going to be long silences, right." "Yes," I said. She nodded once and turned back to her herbs. I went out into the cold and untied my horse and rode for Thornwall. She came 11 days later. She did not send word ahead. She arrived at Thornwall's iron gates on a gray morning in early winter with her horse, a saddlebag, and the herb keeper's bundle she carried everywhere, dried things, tools, small glass bottles, and told the gate guards her name. They sent for me, and I came down from the keep, and she was standing in the gate yard in her plain gray riding clothes with her breath making small clouds in the cold air, looking at the walls of Thornwall with the expression of someone conducting a practical assessment rather than being impressed. I crossed the yard to her. "You didn't write," I said. "I didn't know my arrival date until I left," she said. "Fair," I said. I brought her inside. I gave her a room on the keep's south side, where the afternoon light came in. She put her herb bundle on the table beside the window and looked around the room with that same assessing calm. "It's a good room," she said. "I'm glad," I said. The morning council meeting was in an hour. I had not mentioned Myra to the council, not her name, not the bond mark, not the matter of what she was to me. I had told them only that Soren had been recovered, which had produced the visible collective relief of men who had been quietly worried about the condition of their king's wolf spirit for 43 days. I brought her to the hall that evening. My commanders were there, 4 of them, the inner circle of Thornwall's governance, the men who had signed the campaign dispatches and decorated me and given me a title and a set of stones to live in. They were good men, competent men, men who assessed everything on its merits, including people, which meant they assessed Myra when I brought her into the hall in exactly the way she had anticipated and in a way she gave no visible sign of finding notable. No rank, an herb keeper, a village woman from Ashfin, their king's companion, reason unclear. I let them assess. I waited until the introductions were done and the meal had begun, and then I spoke plainly. Her name is Myra, I said. She is my fated mate. The bond mark appeared on her wrist 11 days ago when she called Soren back from silence. You may examine the mark if you have any doubt about what it is. I looked around the table. She holds no pack rank and comes from no notable bloodline, and those things do not change what she is. Thornwall's Luna is an Ashfin herb keeper, and she is more than sufficient. Silence in the hall. Not a hostile silence, not the silence of objection or calculation, the silence of 4 serious men processing a fact that was outside their prepared categories. Commander Haveth, the oldest of them, a man who had served 3 kings before me, looked at Myra for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Then he looked back at Myra. The wolf is recovered, he said. Completely, I said. He nodded once. Then she is welcome, he said, and that was that. I know from the way these things work that there were conversations later that I was not present for, questions, assessments, the natural friction of an institution integrating something it had not planned for. I did not hear those conversations, but I knew they happened, and I trusted that Thornwall's walls were solid enough to hold something unexpected without cracking. They were. Thornwall was made of granite. It did not crack easily. What I remember most clearly from that evening is not the formal declaration or the commander's reaction. It is Myra at the end of the long table, eating without performance, asking Commander Haveth a question about the border supply routes that surprised him into a 20-minute explanation. Because she had, she said, been thinking about the difficulty of getting medicinal herbs to forward positions in winter, and she had some thoughts. I watched Haveth talking to her and I thought, yes, correctly located, both of us finally in the right place, talking to the right people, doing the right things. Soren lay quiet inside me, for the first time since Coldstep Ridge, with the ease of a wolf at rest in its own territory. There is a thing they do not write in the campaign dispatches, either. They do not write about what waits when a soldier comes home, not the welcome, not the ceremony, not the decoration pressed into a palm in a stone hall. Those things are real, and I do not diminish them, but they are not the most important thing. The most important thing is smaller and harder to put into words, and it takes longer to understand. The most important thing is finding out what held while you were gone. Some things do not hold. Some things that seemed solid before a campaign prove, on a soldier's return, to have been built on provisional agreements and the convenience of proximity. They are not wrong for failing to hold. They simply were not made of the materials required. And a soldier has to understand this without bitterness, because bitterness is the wrong lesson. Some things hold because they are made of the right materials. Myra had not held for me. I want to be precise about this, because she had been clear about it and she deserves the same clarity in return. She had not waited. She had not stood at a window counting the days. She had been alive and she had done her work, and the thing she was made of had simply continued to be what it was, unchanged by my absence, unchanged by my silence, the way a river keeps its course under winter ice and comes up running in exactly the right direction in the spring. That is the thing that held, not a choice, not a vigil, the substance itself. I know what it costs to find that, coming home from a place like Coldstep Ridge. I know because I have spoken to the other men who came back, the survivors, and I have seen what it means to a man who returns broken and finds something still standing in the direction he had been walking before the war reshaped him. It does not fix the war. It does not undo what the wolf has seen, but it gives the wolf somewhere to face, and a wolf that is facing somewhere is a wolf that can go on. Sauron goes on. He is slower than he was before the campaign and more careful, and he carries the weight of what he carries the way a man carries an old injury, working around it, making allowance for it, not pretending it is not there. But he goes on. He faces forward. And Myra is in the room with the south-facing window, where the afternoon light comes in, growing things on the sill. She has converted the storeroom off the kitchen into a proper herb workroom. She has strong opinions about the medical supplies available to Thornwall's border companies, and she is in the 3rd month of reorganizing them, which has produced, in the border commanders, the particular expression of people who had not known a thing was wrong until someone pointed out how much better it could be. I watch her sometimes in the afternoons. She does not notice, or she pretends not to. She stands at her workroom table the way she stands at every table, quietly, without wasted motion, and her hands move over her herbs the way they moved over my chest on the evening she called Sauron home. Deliberate, careful, attending to the thing in front of her as if it is the only thing in the world, and the only thing in the world deserves that kind of attention. The bond mark on her wrist is warm in the afternoon light. It will be warm for the rest of our lives, mine and hers and Sauron's, a record of the evening in a kitchen in Ashfin when a woman who was nobody's Luna, and nothing in particular by the world's accounting, simply laid her hands on a broken thing and called it back, because that was what she did, and the broken thing came home. She is my fated mate. She is Thornwall's Luna. She is an Ashfin herb keeper with herb-stained hands and a low window she plants things in wherever she goes, and she is more than sufficient. She always was.